Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Raiderland special podcast. No, this is not the Williams and Hyatt Show, though it may kind of feel like that. We do have an opportunity to sit down occasionally with our old cohort from radio, the Pride of the Avalanche Journal, a man who just enjoyed his 20th high school reunion there in Tulia. It's Don Williams. How you doing, man?
My 20th high school reunion times two, Rhino, is actually the 40th for me.
Yeah, that's prodigious. I'm chasing you down. They're trying to do like a 35th. You know, it's bad when you get to that point with the reunions where they're thinking, man, we should probably get together a whole lot more often now, because you just never know. I'm like, can we at least keep this on the zeros? Yeah, sound like you had a pretty good time up there. Where did they have it? Was it at the school? Did you go to somebody's house there in Tulia? Where were you?
It was a really big shindig. It was a two-night affair. There was one classmate who hosted on Friday night a get-together at a really nice, barn. And then Saturday was the parade. And then after the parade, Saturday morning, get together at the park there in town.
Oh,
and
wow.
then Saturday night, another get-together at another classmate's house, and that's the portion of the proceedings that I attended. So I was there from 7 p.m. Saturday until about 12:45 a.m.
Now, here's how you know if it was big shindig or not. In the parade, did you just go down the street once, or did you double back and come back again for the folks on the other side?
Well, see, I wasn't there. I didn't make the early portion of the. I didn't quite make the early portion in time to see that. So.
It's a shame because, like the Sandhill celebration in Olton, you come up one side and then you come back the other side, so everybody gets the full dose, and that way the parade lasts longer than 2 minutes.
Of course, that's Olton. We're Tulia, so we're probably bigger than you. Our parade's probably bigger than your parade.
Oh, I have no doubt. Whatsoever. I got to thinking a couple of weeks ago with Big 12 Media Days coming up. The changing nature of what we do and how we do and how that event has changed over the years. And we're both veteran journalists enough to have been around for the final days of the Southwest Conference. And I don't know how many people, Don, really remember. We'll get to modern day stuff in a little bit. But that prior to gathering together in one place, and I assume that the first time that happened for us was the Big 12 and having it in one consolidated place. The writers and the TV people used to lug their, Royal typewriters around to each and every school around the Big 12. Now, you never went on the old Southwest Conference tour, did you?
Oh, that's incorrect. I definitely went on the Southwest Conference press tour.
You went to Houston. Did you go to Arkansas?
Yeah. Yeah, because they had the Southwest Conference press. I mean, I started working as the AJ in 1988, and they had the Southwest Conference press tour all the way until the end, which the last season was, 95?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was not only on the Southwest Conference press tour, I was on Southwest Conference press tours.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. You are old. Okay. Because I figured it was, probably Norval schlutting around, or Doug or somebody. So you actually got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very memorable. Would you like me to break down the logistics of it?
Yes, please do. Okay. People tuning in tonight for the logistics, Don.
Well, give me like 60 or 90 seconds here because it takes a while to describe this. Okay, so this is a time when the Southwest Conference had nine teams at the end. Well, I guess not. I guess at the end, Arkansas was already gone, but even. But in my early experiences on Southwest Conference press tour, you had 9 schools, and so the press tour, my recollection was it would start at one of the extreme campuses. I'll use that term. Texas Tech being one,
right,
and Arkansas and Fayetteville being the other extreme campus. And so those who wanted, let's say, would fly to Arkansas, where the Southwest Conference press tour would convene. You would get there in the morning. You would have lunch at Arkansas's Probably Athletic Dining Hall at noon. And then from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., you would have a head coach's press conference. A room full of writers would listen to the head coach and ask questions. the coach in front of probably about 40 people, I guess, asking questions. Then you'd break up and you would have at tables, you would have a player. You'd have, say, a dozen players at a dozen different tables, and then the riders would go sit down and talk to whatever players you wanted to talk to, and then you'd get up and move to another table and chat with a player for 10 minutes, and you get up and move to another player table and chat with a different player for another 10 minutes, and you'd have a notebook full of stuff, and then at 4 p.m. or so, 3:30, 4 o'clock, you'd get on the bus. They would drive you to the hotel. Everybody would check into the hotel. They would begin riding at a furious pace because at 7 p.m. that evening, then the Arkansas delegation, the coach, the athletics director, various other people who worked in the athletic department would host the riders and sportscasters at a dinner location. In Arkansas is a popular Italian place called Mary Maestri's.
Nice.
And so that would last from like 7 to 10 p.m. And then then the next day we would fly to, let's say we'd fly to Houston. Okay, now in Houston, so then we would get on the bus and go to U of H and repeat that process. Noon, arrive on campus, talk to the head coach, talk to the players. 4 o'clock, go to a hotel in Houston. 7 o'clock, have the UH shindig that night with U of H people. Next morning, you get on the bus and drive and go over to the Rice campus. Repeat the process. Morning after that, get on the bus, drive to College Station. Repeat the process at Texas A&M. Morning after that, get on the bus and go to Austin. Repeat the process at UT. Actually, I should say, usually that would be like on a Sunday, and you'd have like the Sunday off.
Yeah. And you had the off day. It's like Wimbledon used to have the Sunday off day. The Southwest Conference riders had their off day on Sunday, and So
then Monday morning you'd go to UT campus and repeat the process. Repeat the process in Austin. I remember when we went to the athletic dining hall one year, John Makovic happened to be in line behind me, and he put some blueberry cobbler on my tray and told me that's really good. That's John Makovic's way of being chummy with the riders. Put some blueberry cobbler on.
Yeah, and he got his special. Yeah, he got his special plate of brie, a nice chablis, and some Triscuits, and then probably blinked out because most of the time John Makovic was concussed while he was at UT.
Yeah. So then the next morning, after we did the UT, we get on the bus, drive to Waco, do the whole thing at Baylor. Next day, get on the bus, drive to Dallas, do the whole thing at SMU, repeat the process at SMU. Next morning, get on the bus, drive over to Fort Worth, repeat the process with TCU. And then you would get on the plane at probably Love Field. And those who wanted to then and had budgeted for it, then we would fly out to Lubbock. And Lubbock would be the last stop. I think most years Lubbock was the last stop, or like I say, maybe they did reverse, and some years Arkansas was the last stop. But show up at the Tech. Let me complete it here. Show up at the Tech Athletic Dining Hall. Everybody have dinner at the dining hall. Hobnob with Spike. Sit down and talk to a dozen Texas Tech players, and then the riders would check into the hotel at 4 o'clock. And then at 7 p.m., everybody would go to, where they went to?
Yep, 50-yard line.
50-yard line restaurant there on the South Loop. And that was how the Southwest Conference press tour was conducted back in those days.
And then there was another gathering later on we can talk about. You see, Don, okay, so young me, and I'm considerably younger than you, I never got to travel on the Southwest Conference press tour like that. So I would see you guys when you got to Lubbock, and whoever made it, and it looked like, for most of the media types who made it out to Lubbock, it looked like they had just gotten out of a Civil War prisoner of war camp, and they were bedraggled. They were strung out from the road. Looked like, they hadn't bathed in several days, and they were just happy to be alive by the time after the blueberry muffins ran out there at 50-yard line. By the time we convened at Lubbock Inn, room 214, it was a weary, battle-torn group.
Couple of thoughts there. you said, and I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, it's unfortunate that you missed it because you would have loved
Yeah.
it, and you didn't miss it by much because you're only
No.
5 years younger than I am, and like I say, I probably was on the Southwest Conference press tour about last 5 years, I would say. So I did it several times. You're right to the extent that again, it was a 10-day. If you did the whole thing, you were there. You did 10 days with 9 schools, nine schools, one each day, and a Sunday off at one of the locations in the middle. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of riding. There's a whole bunch of interviewing. There's a whole bunch of riding. At least though the bus, those were short hauls on the bus because you're going Houston to College Station, you're going College Station to Austin, you're going to Austin to Waco, you're going Waco to either Fort Worth or Dallas, and then you're going to across the Metroplex one of those days. So then you had the 2 flights to get to Arkansas and to get to Lubbock. So yeah, it was like I say, nine big all day events with only one day off in between.
Well, and I'll tell you this, I think that set up the college football fan, the Southwest Conference fan, was so much better served by the material that was generated, the access that you had, the content that was generated in those settings to me. And I can say it from the tech standpoint, in just that one day at Tech, what we would get multiplied across the conference. I think it was just such a better deal for the fan because you guys were able to, the coaches were more forthcoming. You had more players. It was not an antiseptic setting inside the Death Star Jones Stadium. It was so much more personal. And I know, Don, this is weird, but it's almost like we were interviewing real people back then, as opposed to a sit down at the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholders meeting, and there's somebody at a podium 50 yards away. Hi, can you see me? Yeah. I have a question for the small guy in a suit. Totally different environment. I think led to better coverage.
It was different. It was not. It's not impersonal because what you don't see at Big 12 Media Days. At Big 12 Media Days, you see the made for TV portion of it, but there's also a portion then after lunch where each of the coaches sits down at a table and the players mingle. And so, I talked to Tyler Shuck, one on, small group, 3-on-1 last week, and Sharon Bradley 1-on-1. Sonny Dyke still knows me. If I were Dana Holgerson, Neil Brown, when I ask a question, it's like old times. But I will say this. Hang on just a moment. I will say this though. It was better back then in the sense that when you're going to each campus location, you're writing only about that team that day. And so we did an in-depth story and notes on University of Houston, the Cougars, and then we did in-depth story and notes on the Rice Owls, and then we did in-depth story and notes on the Aggies. A whole bunch of stuff on one school each day. That's what you don't get now with only a 2-day event in one location where, my strategy basically is, okay, whatever Brett Yormark said, that's what I'm writing about the first day. And then, and then I'm writing about Texas Tech the second day, and there's not really much other space left for all the other goings on in the conference.
Yeah, and I am guilty, as many old people are, like ourselves, Don, of over-romanticizing the past sometimes and glossing over how it was. Because it certainly wasn't like it was completely unguarded on the part of the coaches and players back in the late 80s, early 90s in any stretch. I don't know, it just seemed more familiar. And maybe part of that, too, was the idea of traveling around with the same group of guys for an extended period of time, and you guys working together as a media group that not from a competition standpoint, but kind of feeding off each other and really you guys get to know each other and hey, he's going to ask some good questions. We're going to ask some good questions. I don't know. I probably over romanticize it.
Well, you're not over romanticizing it. Now, we'll say what you're describing, what you don't have now. Like I say, you had that structure of you're on the bus at 9 o'clock in the morning driving to a campus, and then you were having lunch in the dining hall at noon, and then you're doing interviews 1 to 4, and then you're writing from 4 to 7, and then you're going to that athletic department's uh, entertainment option that night at wherever it might be. So, I mean, I can remember, you can have dinner at 7 o'clock with, R.C. Slocum is there and he's milling around talking to the writers, and R.C. Slocum's drinking a beer and he's there from 7 o'clock till 10, talking to the writers, 5 or 6 guys at a time, yucking it up. And you can do the same thing with Spike at 50-yard line. And you could do that with Grant. Grant may not have been drinking a beer. I don't know.
Yeah, Grant might have been throwing down the Jack Daniels.
Trying to remember the name of the Waco place that the Southwest Conference Press Tour always stopped at. But you're right from the standpoint when you say you're not over romanticizing it, because there was more opportunity to interact and mingle with those coaches who then put names with faces, and that kind of paid off or benefited both parties then as the season went on.
Those last years of the Southwest Conference, or even maybe some of the first Big 12 years we covered together, if you were going to do like a Hall of Fame of interviewees, I guess, of either some Southwest Conference players or coaches that you were either looking forward to it when you were going, or after you got done, say that was just great stuff. Who were some of your favorite guys to talk to?
Well, of course, I think most people would probably say Spike. First night when you asked the question, first name that popped to mind for me was John Jenkins down at the University of Houston, because Jenkins, of course, was
nuts.
He was not only so radical with his offensive approach, where heavens to Betsy, I mean, he's throwing the football 60 times a game. Who does that? Of course, now everybody does that. Now everybody does that. But John Jenkins was radical in that approach. But even more than that, he was quite the personality and was pretty unfiltered. And I remember him talking about, he once described, he had some linebacker. I don't remember what linebacker it was, but talking about his aggressiveness or whatever, he said, he was, quote, blowing snot bubbles big as oysters.
Well, we said that's how I want my oysters brought out. Don't bring them out unless. So, I don't know that I wasn't expecting snot bubbles and oysters to be a part of the proceedings tonight, as we look back on kind of the interesting changes in coverage and everything else. Okay, so now let's fast forward to what you did last week. What's better? What do you like better, other than not being on the road for 10 days?
Well, I was going to say, at age 58, I like the fact that it was only about a 2 or 3 day commitment between leaving and being back home. What's better?
If anything.
Well, like I say, from an informational purposes standpoint, it's impossible to beat the way it used to be. I mean, again, when you can spend 3 to 4 hours doing interviews of one team, and then mingle with the head coach for another however long in the evening. I mean, from an informational standpoint and delivering that information to readers, it's I would say it's impossible to beat that arrangement that we had, which now, of course, obviously is impractical, because you don't just drive from Lubbock you don't just get on the bus from Lubbock to Norman.
Beautiful Morgantown.
Or Morgantown to. Don't get on the bus from Morgantown to Ames. So it's not practical to do that kind of thing anymore. And I tell you, well, and here's the other thing. Of course, back then, the people doing it were traditional media outlets. You're talking primarily newspaper reporters, sports
Yeah.
writers, with a few dedicated radio guys such as yourself and a few TV people mixed in. But it was predominantly the sports writers who made all the stops. Most of my recollection is the majority of the TV people came out to do their schools, and maybe they made some of the short haul bus trips, but they were not there for all 10 days. There were a dedicated few, maybe TV people and radio people such as yourself, who had actually did the whole thing. And as I say, it's unfortunate that you came of age at a time to just miss out on all of that, because you would have done a heck of a job at it, and would have had a hell of a time. And knowing you would have had a hell of a time, because there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun had.
I would have been lucky to live through it. Let's be honest. There's probably a good reason that me at age 25 was not on the road for 10 days going to every place in the Southwest Conference. It would have turned out ugly, most likely. And we didn't, let's be honest, we didn't have the budget. We would not have had the budget for me to be on the road that long at that age in life. Those last few years of the Southwest Conference, or even one of your first two tours that you went on, who were some of the riders that you were like, wow, I am sitting here on a bus talking to Jerry frickin' Wissig?
Well, it's funny. Jerry Wissig was a fantastic guy, because Jerry was not only a talented guy who he worked in Houston. He was a Houston guy, covered U of H, among plenty of other things, but was a super nice guy to young'uns like me. Like I was. Denny Freeman, the Texas Associated Press sports editor. Dave Campbell, obviously, from the Waco Tribune Herald. I was trying to think. Whit Canning from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, real friendly guy. It's unfortunate all the names that I just mentioned there, all those guys have passed on in the last few years. Those are some of the names that stick out to me. Guys who are not only veteran riders, but really treated me great when I was 25 years old, new kid on the block.
So bring it back to kind of modern day, and for from a Texas Tech standpoint or whatever. And we were talking about some of the older coaches and what it was like to hang around, R.C. Slocum having a beer, Spike just being Spike and whatnot. Out of the coaches in the current Big 12, which of the current head coaches would most have fit in back in the 80s, in the early 90s? Who can you see being in that group and being comfortable in their own skin with some of those guys?
Well, it's a risk of sounding like a homer. Joey McGuire obviously would have been. That would have been right up his alley. He was obviously the personality is not the same as Spike's, but the people person aspect of Joey McGuire would have been right up his alley, to have been a throwback coach who yucked it up with the Riders back then. Let me think. Let me look at the schools. I guess Sonny, because Sonny knows how it was, because he grew up in Spike's house. Neil Brown's always been super media friendly. Hope for his standpoint that he wins a bunch of games this year so that they won't fire him. Yeah. Let me think. Those are really the ones that kind of stick out, that would have, as I look down Mike Gundy, of course, is not afraid to say. Mike Gundy will say whatever's on his mind. So he probably would have been a good guy to meet with during the evening get together at Eskimo Joe's.
Oh, good Lord, yeah, yeah. 1990 Mike Gundy, and hold on, we're really off the record now. Okay, hold my beer. In fact, we're going out. We're leaving here. Y'all come with me. I can see that. I can even see a little bit of Dana Holgerson.
Oh yeah. How did I forget Dana Holgerson? I was looking at last.
Yeah, he's got 1980s hair. Anyways, I think he would have worked in just fine.
Yeah, no doubt Dana Holgerson would have fit in that setting. I was just looking at last year's standings, so I had forgotten about the four newcomers. I tell you, Gus had a good chat with Gus Malzahn. Yeah. Gus Malzahn last week. I think he would have been seemed like a made a good first impression on me. He probably would have been a guy who would fit in that in those settings.
Yeah. All right, so we're kind of focusing here on the media aspect, and that's the hubris and the arrogance of media guys getting together. We talk about us. We talk about how we do what we do. And we started this kind of talking about the old throwback Southwest Conference media tour. Somebody just jumped in, ironically enough, and sped to the end. Anyhow, what you and I do today compared to how we began. I mean, there's. Again, this is sounding very self-centered or whatever. What do you enjoy today about being in sports media? That I'll go the improvement aspect of it. Here we are recording this on our laptops or whatever with our video camera, and you and I both ushered in the internet and the cell phone era in sports media. You a little bit later on the cell phone than some others, but still got in. But doing what we do today, what do you like about it more than 1988?
I guess probably the realization that any Texas Tech fan anywhere in the world can read my stuff just as quickly as somebody right down the street in Lubbock, Texas. If you're a Texas Tech fan who lives in Europe and I put a story online, you have the same access to it as my sister who lives off 2nd in Milwaukee, which is like I say, it's kind of I know there's obviously the reality that circulation of newspapers, of course, has declined drastically, but the our ability to have our work read by, like I say, literally anybody in the world who has the internet is kind of an amazing thing. We wouldn't, back in the days of the Southwest Conference press tour, my quote about John Jenkins saying a linebacker was coming at you with blowing snot bubbles big as oysters. You could read about that in Lubbock, Texas the next morning, but you would have to get it through the mail if you're a Tech fan somewhere. If you're a fan somewhere else, obviously just the technology. With, of course, Twitter's been a game changer for sports media.
Yeah. And I hated it when it started, and some days I still hate it, but it's.
And some days I do still, sometimes we do still hate it.
Yeah.
But
does it ever completely surprise you the impact that you have with 127 characters sometimes and the feedback you get from that? Because you are the master of Twitter and the master of Twitter receipts, by the way, the Lubbock Sports Media. But because it still surprises me sometimes, just that just the amount of people that see it. And the feedback you get from it.
Well, I forgot. What was the original question?
You know what the hell the question is? Does it surprise you the impact that you have on Twitter sometimes? And how either personal people take it or the reaction that it gets when sometimes we'll put out something that seems very innocuous, and the next thing you know, there's 57 replies to it, and people all around the country are going, "How dare you say this?" And you're just like, "Yeah, it's just a statement."
Well, I can give you an example from just in the last 48 hours, because I'm thinking, I don't even remember what I tweeted. Something was said about, somebody asked me about, logo. What's the logo going to be at midfield at John Stadium?
Oh yeah.
And I tweeted, how about the Master Rider rear with atop the horse rearing on its hind legs?
Yeah, the old logo from the 70s that was at midfield.
The logo from the 70s that was at midfield, and the response to that tweet was large numbers. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I spent the last week in Arlington covering the Big 12 media days, and an unrelated tweet about what is the logo going to be on the turf at Jones Stadium got more interaction than anything I tweeted for media days. So that's a case in point of what you just described there. Am I surprised though? Am I surprised the interaction that we get? No, I'm not. I would say though that's not because of me. That's just because of I'm tweeting about college football. And if you're tweeting about if you're someone who covers a Power 5, if you're someone who covers a Power 5 school, you're going to get interaction on social media.
Let's see. Got any bold predictions on Texas Tech this fall?
BOLD bold or BOWL bold?
BOLD, just bold. Something that might surprise somebody. I gotta figure out a way to put this on Twitter that'll get people to pay attention to this podcast tonight. Don Williams says.
Well, I'm probably going to let you down there. I don't know that I don't really have a bold prediction. I think my view, at least of Texas Tech's expectation for Texas Tech this year, I think are probably in line with what most people feel. And I've told people this in the last few days. I think it would be a disappointment if Tech doesn't go at least 8-5 this year. I think it maybe be a disappointment if they don't go at least 8-4 in the regular season. I think 9-3 is realistic. A realistic hope that you can get there. To get to 10 wins, though, I think you probably will need some breaks. You need a lot of things to go right to get to 10 wins. Because while I think you have an experienced team, you have good talent on this team. I don't think you have the dominant level of talent that you need to get to double-digit victories without a lot of things breaking right for you.
All right, that's pretty good. I can make that work. I can tease that, and then people will go to the end of the podcast and go, oh, that was the bold prediction. All right. I enjoy doing this. We're going to have to do this a few more times. I guess I'll probably see you not next week, but they're on the 3rd when they report and we find out, hey, that guy's not 6'6", 290 pounds. He's 6'4". No, it's not like that anymore. Appreciate the time. Everybody needs to follow you on Twitter. They're already doing it. Be well. All right.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I had fun talking about old times, and you're right. We should do this more often, Rhino.
Yeah. I think legally we can call it the Williams and Hyatt Show now. I think the statute of limitations on that is ended. For Don Williams, I'm Ryan Hyatt. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you soon in Raiderland.